Hello everyone, Captain Snuggles here, back again with some more Jumplight Odyssey basic training. Last time we talked about our beautiful ship here, the SDF Catalina, and some of its core functions and capabilities. This time our basic training is going to focus on resources, especially resource production, and especially resource loops. Now when I say resource loop, I mean feedbacks between production of various resources that can sometimes feed into one another in positive ways and benefit your ship, but more often feed into one another in negative ways that negatively impacts your ship, can send you into what's called a death spiral, where you quickly lose control over production of one resource and then another, and your run gets into just an unsalvageable situation. Now, the Catalina has 12 resources that we can work with. 2 of those are Jumplight and Hope. Those 2 are special. They don't have the same kind of feedbacks or the same kind of production that the other 10 do. So we will not be talking about Jumplight or Hope here. The other 10 that we will be talking about are Material, Metal, Plastic, Composite, Biomass, Produce, Metagel, Ammunition, Power, and Water. Now then, we're really going to focus on 4 of those. Those being Power, Water, Biomass, and Produce. And the reason why those 4 are more of a focus than the other 6, well, that reason is right here. So our shuttles can pretty reliably get plenty of material, composites, ammo, and metagel, and they're reasonably reliable for metal and plastic. So you have to worry a lot less about those 6. Now, it's still not great to run out of any of them, but if you do run out of one of them, you always have the fallback of your shuttle missions that can get you more and salvage the situation. Now, it is possible for shuttles to get you biomass, produce, and water, so everything except for power really can be acquired by shuttles. However, the biomass, the produce, and the water are either not reliable enough or not plentiful enough on shuttle missions to really carry your run. So we have to produce power, water, biomass, and produce on our ship. So given that we have to produce those 4 on the ship, and we cannot rely on our shuttles to bring in more of them if we get into a tough situation, well, we need to make sure that our production of those 4 resources on the ship is reliable. And to do that, we have to understand the feedbacks between those resources. So essentially, we need power to do just about anything. But in terms of those 4 resources, we need power to make water. We need water to make biomass, and we need biomass and power and water to make produce. And so that is how those 4 tie into one another. Additionally, produce and water have direct impacts on your crew in terms of preventing starvation and preventing dehydration. So there are complicated interactions here, but let's talk about worst case scenarios where you run out of one of these resources. So, working backwards along that chain, if you run out of produce, the only thing that happens is your crew can no longer make meals, and they'll eventually get hungry and begin to take damage from starvation. Now, that's certainly not good, but that isn't a run-ending situation on its own. You can easily recover from a loss of produce as long as the production of biomass and water and power is doing fine. So, running out of produce, not too bad. It gets a lot worse with running out of biomass. because running out of biomass disrupts your ability to make produce, to produce power with fuel burning reactors, and also to expand your biomass production. And so it actually takes biomass to make biomass. If you want to build more algae crops, you have to have biomass to build those. So that's a pretty bad situation, because losing biomass impacts produce and biomass, as well as a certain portion of your power supply. It's bad, but you can usually recover from that, because frequently you'll have other methods of making power, like nuclear generators, and your water situation, if it's stable, should still be fine. So those two core resources should still be doing fine, even if you run out of biomass, so you can still recover. But now, working our way down the chain, this is where it gets really nasty. Running out of water disrupts all kinds of things. It disrupts your ability to water your crops, in other words, to make biomass and produce. It disrupts your ability to make oxygen, and so you need oxygen to make water, or to run water condensers, but you also need water to power your oxygen generators, or to water your shrubberies that also make oxygen. So those three things, disrupting oxygen, produce, and biomass, are already bad on their own, but in addition, your crew uses water to drink, to hydrate themselves, and also to wash themselves. So running out of water causes you shortages in oxygen, in produce, and biomass, and your crew will start to lose their hydration and their hygiene. And so running out of water, running completely out of water, mind you, is very bad. It is a potential game over if you don't fix it fast enough. That being said, the crew can get by for a little while without anything to drink or anything to wash in, and hopefully you have a little bit of a produce and biomass store saved up so that you can get your water production back up and running. It's still a very bad situation, and you can certainly lose by running out of water, but you can recover without having to get too crazy with it. But then that brings us down to power. And this is the nasty one, because running out of power disrupts your ability to do almost anything, and critically, that includes the ability to make more power. So, as crazy as this seems, this reactor room is not powered by this fuel burning reactor. This reactor room is powered by this power switch here. You have to have some power in your batteries in order to have this power switch on. So if you run out of power, there's a very high likelihood that your reactor room will shut off, especially if you're running something like a nuclear generator that requires a higher amount of base power in the battery in order to turn on it and all of its associated modules. So, that is bad. You run out of power, you probably cannot make more power, aside from the Catalina's base 100 megawatts per hour. So you can't make more power, or at least not very much of it. You also can't have gravity in your corridors, you can't condense water, you can't run your produce and biomass generation, you can't run your manufacturing, you can't even run your Jumplight calibrators. So essentially, without power, as you might expect, your ship is dead in the water. Now, that is absolutely terrible, and that is very likely to be game over. It is possible to salvage the situation because, like we talked about last time, the Catalina does make some power on its own without you having to do much of anything else. As long as this power switch right here stays on, the Catalina will make power for you. 100 units of power per hour. So you just have to keep this power switch on, and ideally, the power switch in your reactor room as well. And so you can, if you run out of power, go through and deactivate everything. Do that over and over across the ship. You could even turn this off as well and just focus on keeping that hangar powered, keeping this one power switch up and running, and hoping that the Catalina's power will refill your batteries and you can get back up and running. So it is possible to salvage the situation. However, so many things depend on power that it's very likely that by the time you get your power back up and running, you will have run out of something else. Or the Zootopans will have caught you and just demolished you with your unpowered turrets. So it's a rough situation. You do not want to run out of any of these resources: power, water, biomass, or produce. You don't want to run out of produce. You really don't want to run out of biomass. You really don't want to run out of water. And you really do not want to run out of power, because of those loops, those feedbacks, and the way resource production ties into itself. So all that being said, how do we avoid that? Well, essentially, we work down the chain there. So before you plant any more produce, before you expand your greenhouse and plant, peas, corn, what have you, before you plant any more produce, you make sure you have enough biomass and enough water to support those new crops. Same thing goes for biomass. Before you plant any more biomass, you make sure that you have enough water to support it. And before you build any more water condensers, you make sure that you have enough power to support them. And so if you take those precautions and build carefully and think critically about the resources you have and the resources that you're trying to build, you should be all right. And that really is the long and the short of it. I know it sounds fairly simple. It is sometimes a little bit stressful in practice, but it is absolutely doable. I promise. I know a lot of people's runs, including some of mine, have gotten undone by lack of one of those resources. But the key thing is, don't panic. Think strategically. If it's one of those 4 resources we've been talking about, just plan carefully and make sure that you don't run out. And if it's one of the other 6 resources, if you run out, it's bad news, but remember, you can just send out a shuttle to get more. And that's that. This was a much shorter episode, but these resource loops, although they're simple, are absolutely key to success in this game. So I hope that this was helpful for you all, and this plus the previous episode is really going to lay the groundwork, well, for you to succeed in your runs and also for the upcoming episodes in this series. So look forward to that. I hope you learned something today, and for now, this is Captain Snuggles signing off.